I want to share with you a recent webinar that I conducted with the University of Northampton. And the big thing here is that I did give a presentation dealing with important information that all instructors need to know about. And of course, it covered AI literacy in general, but then I also ensured that I had enough time to give a Q&A session. So I want to share with you some highlights of that presentation and specifically the Q&As, because this gives you insights to the type of questions that are being asked right now by instructors. These are typical questions that I see in many different places. So I want to share all of that with you so that you can get a better understanding of what's going on. So together we can fully address these issues. First of all, I want to thank all of you for attending this. One of the big messages that's going to come from this deals with specific information that you need to know within the realm of education dealing with AI. And one of the things that you need to know is what you're doing right now, continuing on with lifelong education. I know that seems like almost what's the word? It's like something that everybody knows about, but just because everybody knows doesn't mean that everybody does it. And that's exactly what you're doing here. So kudos to all of you for being here, giving me your time so that I can share this message with you. So here's the first big thing to understand is this aspect of AI literacy. So what this means is that this is fundamental information that you need to know, that everyone needs to know, whether you're in academia or not. Everyone needs to know these key concepts in order to properly use AI effectively and efficiently. Now, the first question that comes up is, oh, hey, won't this be out of date really fast, especially since I wrote a book specifically about AI literacy? And the answer is actually no, this won't be outdated. Foundational knowledge of what this is won't. So that's important to understand as well, is that these are key concepts that all of us need to have and continually develop. This is a share technique here. So the idea is that we're looking at our assignments, our assessments, and then we're redesigning them to address certain issues associated with AI. The things that we've done in the past, although they might have been effective, we need to consider, well, now we're in a reality where AI is there. AI is always there and available to the student. Do we need to change assessments? Do we need to change the way that we present the information, the way that we manage the course itself? So this is an important guide that will help us with that as well. Another thing that I want to share with you here, this right here, this recently came out. In fact, this came out 2 days ago. This is where they did some research where they were looking at, they had several different groups of business consultants, and they gave some of them the use of AI, some of them not the use of AI, right? And of course, the group that had the AI, they were more productive. But what was also found out is that professionals who had a negative performance when using the AI tended to blindly adopt its output and interrogate it less. So there were still people in this experiment, again, they were business consultants, but they didn't verify that information. So they actually ended up not being as productive because they didn't check certain things. So again, that's this mentality that we have to instill with everyone, is how to use that AI. It's not enough just to have the AI. Lots of people use AI, but so many people don't use it properly and effectively. We need to develop a community of practice, where, hey, we're able to go to one another to learn from each other, just like this. So this is a prime example of that, and that's what needs to continue to happen, where we're able to discuss these things, to bring problems to one another so that together we can find the best solutions for this. So I'd like to invite all of you to continue the conversation by connecting online in different ways. I'm on LinkedIn, tons of resources on YouTube, as well as through the website and Twitter. And I'm very happy and eager to answer any other questions you might have about that.
What's your thoughts on, particularly working with people at that end? Do you think we have to bring them with us?
Yeah. It's the same situation everywhere you go. Again, I've given presentations, webinars all over the world, and it's the same situation. You have people that are on one end, people that are on the other end as far as enthusiasm or wanting to be part of this. The big thing is to be understanding to begin with, right? Everyone is looking at this from different perspectives. Some people are comfortable with technology to begin with. Some people are slower to adapt to many different things. The big thing that I push with this to all instructors is to understand that there's a continuum of integration of this. There's a continuum of use of AI. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. I have one instructor here that he's a good friend of mine. He deals with philosophy, and he's very much against AI. Right at the beginning, he didn't even want to talk about it, but now I've gone and I've had lots of consultations with him, and he's starting to have discussions about this in his class. So at the very least, he talks about AI. He talks about the aspects of different of use of AI, of the way that it's affecting the world, and then slowly he's starting to use some AI in the class. Right? He'll bring up what has been done. He'll sort of write out a question and then show it in class as far as what the AI can create, and then they have a discussion about that. So again, an instructor can choose to have different controls of what they're comfortable with, whether that's AI discussion, AI where the instructor does something in class, or an assignment where the student has to use AI, or integrating in the writing process. So again, it's up to that instructor, and there's lots that can be done there. So there's definitely lots of possibilities. It never has to be an all or nothing, for sure.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Brent. And your insights, as usual, have been just fantastic. And I want to focus in on that you mentioned about kind of the local installs and thinking about how inclusive practice could utilize AI. Do you feel that it's institutions' responsibility to develop AI offerings in that space, as well as the training for students? Or do you feel that we're going to be in a realm where it's down to the students themselves to be signposted? It's kind of that internally we can guide you and we can train our own models to our own processes, to our own content, compared to almost allowing the students to go off and discover and the issues of inclusivity there based on poverty or neurodiversity. So just something around those kind of conversations.
Right. So yeah, that's a great question. And there's kind of another aspect that ties in with this, because I think there was a question dealing with, well, what about PhD students? What about postdoctoral students that are trying to use it for all these other things? Who's responsible for teaching them, right? So I think that it's important to us to understand that, yes, I think there is a major responsibility for us in academia to develop our students, to teach them AI literacy, to create opportunities for them to use it, to create guides for them, to create specific teaching moments, whether that's separate or integrated into the classes. I think right now, because it's so new, it should be both, just to ensure that students are getting the best information possible, additional guides, resources for them. And then it also falls within the university. What else can they do for the student? Because some universities, maybe they don't have the resources to have the paid version of GPT-4 for everyone, right? Some universities do, and they're implementing that. Awesome. Many universities don't. My university doesn't have a budget for that. So we need to ensure that students understand, okay, how can I use my information? I need to make sure that I'm putting information in there properly. I'm not divulging information that I don't want out there. Even though ChatGPT is fairly safe, it's still important for them to follow good security practices dealing with data and information. But I do think it needs to be this full spectrum of what we're doing. The other big part of that is the other face of the coin, in that the student needs to be responsible for their own learning, just like in general, even without AI, right? What I try to tell students is, hey, it's awesome if you have an instructor that's great, that's perfect, that is able to make this such a dynamic class that motivates you every single time. That's awesome. But that's not the reason for you to fail a class. No, you have to be self-motivated as well. You have to take ownership of your learning. So the students need to understand that they are also empowered to do learning on their own. The example that I gave at the very beginning, that was a student going through it on their own, seeing and recognizing, oh, I didn't grasp this full concept in class. So now I need more instruction, and they're empowered to use the AI in that way, using the advanced prompt formula and then going through it. Now, it's still on them to verify that information, right? Because we talked about the importance of critical thinking. So they need to make sure that, hey, this is all congruent with what I was learning. So of course they had to pay attention in class, check the sources, and make sure that it's correct. but man, that AI can really empower the student to really maximize their capability of learning the content, of practicing the content, and then of being that best educated student possible.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Richard, next.
Hi, Brent. Yeah, thanks very much for your talk. It's been brilliant. I'm just wondering how important do you think it might be for us to celebrate and highlight, I think, the human things that we do and the things that AI can't do. And I'm thinking maybe kind of empathy and being good at communicating and engaging with people. I mean, there's some of those things well at the moment, but I think maybe that human thing that we do is going to become more important than perhaps building content and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I know where you're coming from with this. So one of the big things, so there's two parts to this, right? One is I have instructors that are worried, oh, is this going to take over my job? And the thing that I tell them is maybe. It depends on how good of an instructor you are. Because if you are that instructor that simply shows up and reads a lecture, well then yeah, AI should take over, right? Because AI is better than that. And AI can instantly do two-way communication, as I showed with that simulation. So what's important is for us to maximize exactly what you're talking about with that human aspect. So I, as an instructor, need to really dig deep and improve myself to the very maximum of being that best human possible in that classroom, meaning that I'm engaging, I'm dynamic, I'm active, I'm interacting with my students, so they're getting maximum benefit from that social interaction, that social component, because it's much more than just the data. It's about understanding it, bouncing off ideas from each other, thinking about, well, what is your opinion about this? Well, let's go through a problem together and see how we see things in a different view. Those are things that right now AI can't really do. Additionally, there's the physical aspects of this. Bringing a student up to the front of the class to give a presentation, right? The AI can't really duplicate that type of anxiety that comes from, oh, wow, I'm in front of everybody right now and I'm giving my presentation. I also have to be ready to answer these questions. So again, by maximizing that class time, maximizing that social interaction, that's really where we're really going to get the most out of the human aspect of who we are. In the same way, students need to realize that too, that they gain so much by being in that classroom and developing those communication skills that is much more than just exchanging data. No, it's about insight, understanding, nonverbal communication techniques, all these different additional soft skills that the AI can't provide. Great question.
Thanks, Brent. I think that's a really positive take, isn't it? That that we can tell people about that and they can be really positive about AI.
Definitely, yeah.
Brilliant.
It's a tool to work with, for sure.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Richard, for raising that. Brent, maybe if from your side, maybe you can just talk about perhaps the journey that you've seen staff going through in your institution.
Specifically with staff. That's one of the things that I'm trying to sort of affect the culture, right? Because we have different offices, of course, and in some offices, I've gone and talked to some people, and they're like, yeah, I've actually been using ChatGPT in a hushed tone, like it's a secret. But in other offices, like my office, I have an office here, and I have a bunch of data analysts that deal with a bunch of institutional research that the university conducts. They're on ChatGPT all the time because they're asking questions about analysis. They're asking about possibilities of doing different parameters and different types of ways that they can go through and look at the information, the data that they get. So it's a tool that's out there that's celebrated as, did you ask ChatGPT? Because when there's all sorts of issues and problems that come up, again, we have to think about that prompt formula, using it effectively. And yeah, it offers solutions that might have taken us a couple of hours to figure out, but with ChatGPT, hey, it can give us a solution very quickly, or at least point us in the right direction to help us get the answer so much better. So that's one of the big things I'm trying to affect here, is this culture, so that everyone sees ChatGPT as a tool, not as a secret to keep hidden, but we should be celebrating it because it affects our effectiveness and capabilities if we use it effectively, if we follow the AI literacy and we're using our critical thinking to make sure that we're verifying the information.
That's really helpful. Thank you. looking at the Padlet, and obviously if people want to ask questions in between, then please feel free. We've got Brent for about another 10 minutes or so, so please use the opportunity. But is there anything on the Padlet, Brent, that you feel you just want to say a little bit more about? Maybe something that we didn't go into enough detail about in the talk?
Yeah, so going back to that other question as far as accessibility, I don't think I covered accessibility. Yeah, there's lots of issues there. And again, it's all in the way that you use the AI. Because one of the big things that I've tried to make a video series, and again, strongly recommend everyone checking out my YouTube channel. I've tried to make a video series on using AI as an instructional designer. And so that means any type of question that you have about a course, if you don't have an instructional designer readily available to you, at my university, we don't have any instructional designers. If you don't have one, you can use the AI as a great resource. Again, you formulate it properly by asking the AI to assume the role of a university instructional designer and pose it questions. So I did that actually just yesterday because I have a student that has some accessibility issues. So I asked it directly. I said, hey, I have a student. This is the type of course that I'm teaching. These are some assignments coming up. What can I do to maximize their capabilities as well as my capabilities to teach them in a way that they'll be able to learn given their accessibility issues? And it gave me some great information, lots of possibilities. Now, of course, I'm verifying all that because that's what we need to do, but it gave me ideas that I hadn't thought of at all. And I even went to our accessibility office and asked them questions, and this came up with additional information. Some of it was the same, but some of it was completely different. So that's the real power of this, is that it can give us another perspective. It can give us additional information, and then I can go and dig deep. Oh, well, what do you mean by this? How would I do this with 10 students? How would I do this with 20 students? Again, lots of possibilities there. So I strongly recommend that you use the AI in that way because it can help you in so many different aspects. There was a question here in the Padlet talking about PhD students and research. Yeah, there's some other AIs that are out there that I wanted to recommend. SciSpace is one of them. You can do all sorts of things by uploading an actual PDF, and then it can give you a summary of that, and you can even ask it questions about your PDF. That really can help with different research. One is called Scholarly or Scholarly. It's SCHOLAREY. Another one called Explain Paper. All different resources that have a free plan, right? Usually most of these have like tiered pricing, but there are a lot of different AIs that are designed specifically for research, designed specifically for PhD students. So it's just a matter of doing a search for that and actively looking because they do exist there. The other big thing that I wanted to make sure people understand is that there are differences in the realm of the free ChatGPT and then the paid version. In the paid version, there's something called GPTs, which is an AI, which is again the open AI, but it's compressed so that it's its own system and it has its own information. So it's using that information to give responses. So this is very effective and can be used by an instructor if their students had access to this, because again, you have to be on the paid plan. But then the thing is that it puts specific information about that topic within that encapsulated AI. So that's a tool and a resource to also consider as well, because the paid version does have a lot of different resources available. Yeah.
Two questions that have popped into the chat, Brent. Probably in reversal. So the first one is from Alastair. So he wants to know about tools that are particularly aimed at social sciences rather than, sciencey fields. Mm-hmm. What's your recommendation on that?
First of all, ChatGPT is multifaceted in that it can be used for anything, as well as Google Bard, as well as Bing AI. Because the big thing within the way that we pose questions to it, the way that we pose the prompts, is we can tell it to assume those roles. That's a big part, the context of what we're saying. So I can tell it to assume the role of a humanities professor, assume the role of a chemistry professor, assume the role of an English professor. By telling it that, now it's using the information that's been trained on, but from that perspective. So it's focusing on those things. The more that we can give it the specific instructions, the better our result is going to be. So those basic AIs, those fundamental AIs are out there. There's a lot of different tools. I don't have a listing of tools specific to each one, but all the other ones that I listed as well for research, again, they can accept any type of research and then allow you to manipulate that data that much more so that you can faster and easier review whatever research you're looking at.
And then the other question was about model collapse. I think that was also on the Padlet as well. You say a little bit about that? I don't know if that's something that, I mean, this is about the training data, I think, that goes in, and particularly where AI trains itself as well.
Right. Yeah. So there was a lot of talk here about a month and a half, 2 months ago, talking about, is ChatGPT getting dumber, right? So there were some issues associated with that, but that seems to be corrected and improved. There are other AIs that are being developed where they're using fabricated data that has been created by other AIs. So that's something to look out for, because there is some talk about a fear of running out of data, but I don't think that's going to happen, because they're coming up with different ways of creating data in other ways and looking at existing data, but from a different perspective. So again, I'm not the expert on model collapse, but those are some things that I've been reading.
Thank you. Perhaps a final question from Joe, just conscious of the time.
I just wanted to check. You did say there are AI tools where you can upload like a PDF and ask it to summarize. What I'm a research student, right? What I want to check is, once the AI has summarized, do you then have to change it into your own words, or can you use that for your work? Would that be classed as plagiarism, or where does that stand?
Ooh, okay, great question, right? So this is an aspect of debate, right? So you have people that are debating the aspect of plagiarism to begin with. What is plagiarism? Well, if I had a professor and they accused me of plagiarism, I would say, no, I didn't plagiarize anything. This work didn't exist until I used the tool to create it. So yes, I used an AI, it created this content, but through my effort, and that content didn't exist before. So we would have a debate, an argument about that, because the AI is now creating this gray area. But within policies, you have to look at different policies. At our university, we have a very sort of direct policy that says that we're not even going to argue about plagiarism if you use an AI to create content and your instructor didn't specifically give you permission to do that. It said that, no, you can't use the AI. Well, then it's not a matter of plagiarism, it's a matter of cheating, right? So that's the way it falls into. Now, having said all that, I recently went to a presentation with this high-level researcher, and he was talking about different research journals, and then that question sort of got brought up as far as putting AI-created content into a journal and submitting it and saying that it's your own. His initial answer was, I don't care who wrote it. Who cares if the AI wrote it? And I agree with that, and here's why, because I want to be very clear on this. Again, so now we're outside of a classroom, and now we're talking about a journal submission, right? If I'm submitting that journal submission, the way that the words are put together, the way that it was written is one thing. The person that puts their name on it, that's the person who's fully accountable for everything. So that means that, hey, these research results, I'm blaming you, the author. Hey, the interpretation of the data, I'm not blaming the AI, I'm blaming you, the author. You're the one that's responsible. You're not, the AI isn't the author of anything. The AI isn't the source of anything. Why? Because the AI is trained on multiple other sources. So it's not a matter of us saying, hey, the AI came up with this. Not for this type of generative AI. It's not coming up with things. It might put things together in a different way, but it's still using these other sources. So we have to make sure that we are citing those sources. So that's an important thing to understand. It's not the AI that's doing it. You're the one that's going to be held accountable for the accuracy, for the information, for the reliability, all those things. You're the author when you submit. So that's an important thing to realize as well.
That's really helpful, Brent. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Please do keep in touch. And thank you very much, Brent, for today. Really appreciate your time.
There you go. So those are the questions being asked. They're very typical of other questions that I get from presentations in other parts of the world as well. The big thing here is that we're addressing them. We're continuing to develop our AI literacy. And I really want to highlight and thank the University of Northampton for allowing me to give this presentation. And then I really want to give kudos to those people that actually attended the webinar. That's exactly what we need to be doing. We need to have this mindset of continuous development, lifelong learning. That's what it's all about, in order for us to stay aware of what's going on and to be able to have these skills, develop these skills, improve our skills so that we can then pass them on to our students, because that's what we're here to do. We have to prepare them for the world out there. And it's continually using AI in more and more ways. So we have to be on top of that. And one way to do that is by attending webinars or watching videos like this, buying books, looking at the research articles on Twitter, talking to other people, being part of that community of inquiry. That's really important. I know that's a message that I keep pushing, but that's really important. We need people that are subject matter experts, as well as we need people that aren't. They need to be part of that conversation so that they can ask questions, they can pose their experiences with this. That's how we learn. We learn from each other. So I thank you for watching this video, and I encourage you to continue to watch, to like, to share, so that we can expand this community more and more, and we can continue to learn from each other. Thank you. And remember, learning is for life.